Every once in a while, I come across a movie that, for no particular reason, I want to cover just because it was good and it scratches a certain brain itch. That, at least in this video, is going to be Hokum. Enjoy the ride. As a man has lost both his parents, his plan is to take them to a place where they had visited prior and then spread their ashes. The only issue is, he's a mega tool. As he decides maybe he will join them, it kicks off an entire, kind of unforeseen set of consequences for the entire hotel. Heading into the basement, which is also ill-advised, he would be faced with something that may only exist within his mind. Why am I being vague? Because otherwise, it would be said and then you would click off, and that would be boring. So in today's episode, let's discuss the effects of psychedelics on the fragile circuitry of the human brain, how in some ways, neurochemically speaking, this could be helpful, but also how this could go awry fairly quickly as we cover Hokum. We kick off today's story with Spooky Pictures, woo, and like 14 other production companies. It's from Ireland, if I remember correctly, as we jump over to the famous Irish sand dudes. A man in ye olde armor is out there looking for something on a map. A conquistador, if I'm reading the helmet correctly. A youngling is with him, as then he ditches the armor and keeps walking, probably because it's hot. Drinking the last of his water, the Irish countryside is quite unforgiving and dry, as we all know. Also, I have a straight up fun fact for you about topography because I didn't realize people didn't know this, but so you know like the Appalachian Mountains? Well, the Moroccan Mountains in Africa and the Moorlands in Scotland are all part of the same mountain chain. They just got split up. The Appalachian Mountains actually used to look like the Rockies, but are incredibly old, so they become weathered. This is also why if you go to like the tippy top north of the Appalachian Mountain range, it will start to look a lot like the Moorlands as well, which is pretty cool. Anyhow, the youngling goes for the water next as he finds a ring on the ground. Someone is drinking and also has a ring on their table. As he grabs the sand, he says, "We're close." However, the map is now stuck in the bottle because he got too overzealous closing it up. Trying to break it, he can't. Looking for a rock, there's only one rock out there. A human skull. Bro, take like 4 more seconds to find a rock. You're in the desert. What are you doing? As he tells the youngling it's okay and says nothing can be done, he then tells him to turn away, but still, he's going to go to bash him on the head as a thud is heard behind Prometheus as some firewood then falls. Looking out the window, he sees someone on the stairs, very good, and then turning on the light, not immediately bolting, nothing was there. But oh my god, it was behind him the whole time. Get the salt. But considering they're in the Irish countryside and it's pretty desert-like, one must ask, wouldn't it be better if there was a forest of some kind? Let's start this off by saying remember to stick around to the end so you can find out how to get an exclusive bonus. We are headed back to Teleria, brother, to the deep roots, where ancient oaths still bind the land. Grand Oak Paydrag rises. The living will of the forest, some would maintain, but surely he has to do more than just that. And you're right, he makes your entire team stronger. Every turn, he accelerates your allies, cleanses harmful effects, tell you he loves you and he's proud of you, and calls on your team to strike as one, turning scattered efforts into relentless coordinated assault. Clearly, at this point, you know what this is about. This episode is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, and now it's time to get the forest on your side and obtain one of the more influential support champions in the game for free. New players can download the game via my link below or scan the QR code up on screen to get a huge head start to your journey. 2 legendaries and 1 epic champion for free, including the legendary Grand Oak Paydrag by using promo code WRATH. Personally, I like playing Raid because I'd rather, enjoy achieving new weapons to fight with and new armor to clad my champions in. And when you get like a new, better champion, it's just absolute chef's kiss. Not to mention with the game having AAA graphics and an endless amount of content, which keeps being added all the time, there's always something to do, and it looks nice to look at. If you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? Click the link in my description or scan the QR code to get amazing bonuses available only via my link. Instantly unlock a huge starter pack with legendary Elenaril from the High Elves faction. Reach level 15 to get an amazing epic Uugo, one of the more valuable champions of the game. New players can pick one of 5 promo codes for a free legendary champion of their choice. Legendary Champion Turvald, promo code BIGDAWG. Legendary Champion Alice the Wanderer, promo code GETALICE. Legendary Champion Cheshire Cat, promo code KITTYCUT. Legendary Razzlevarg, promo code GOFAST. And Legendary Grand Oak Paydrag, promo code WRATH. I advise you to pick promo code WRATH because if you don't like the force, then you're just really not about that life. These champions are only available after downloading via my custom link on QR only within 48 hours after downloading with my link. If you go directly to the App Store or using the other link to download, you won't get these packages that Raid's team gave me, so make sure to download with my link. By the way, use a link if you didn't know, then use promo code in-game. Find me under the name Roanoke and join my clan Croatoan. Looking through a box of Ireland photos, he then sees his mom, as then he looks over at the mantle with both parents on the said mantle. Sawing through a lockbox, he then pulls out a force multiplier. Instead of doing that, we get Hokum, Hokum, whichever. As then we head to the other Irish countryside, which is basically just a Forza track if you really think about it. I too have to go to Europe in general in January. Gonna be a blast. I hate flying. But at this point, apparently I've inspired one of my friend's dads to also get on a flight, because he doesn't like to. So unfortunately, I can no longer chicken out of the flight. Ergo, I will turn to the problem solver of the issue, Benadryl, to pass out. As then he drives through the woods, a man then walks across the road as he has arrived at the hotel. Looks to be near Halloween, as pumpkins have been placed up top. This whole movie is like a mega mood come October. Passing a man, he took out a billy goat, as it was apparently a nuisance because it kept getting up on his Volkswagen. Entering the hotel, a man is telling a story about a witch. The witch would stun humans and then chain them up and start taking pieces of their body away. Specific pieces. Pieces that are very important to men. Nuke that witch immediately. Telling the owner not to talk to the younglings, he then tells the younglings not to talk to strangers. Bro's been here 2 minutes and he's already angered the owner and seemingly the owner's son. Also, unconfirmed on that one. He is said to be the manager, but given he's pushing him around in his wheelchair, I'm inclined to believe that there is a familial relationship. Getting his room, the clerk then knows him as the writer. His son apparently is a fan. Benmethius remarks, well, that's disturbing given how disturbed my characters are supposed to be. Big Dog, I'm gonna be honest with you, just take the freaking compliment. Going upstairs, the insufferable famous. Walking past the owner and his son at the elevator, he then heads to his room as a woman asks him if he's lost. Being a chode to her, she then goes like, well, go back to being lost then. Absolutely based, apologizing. She then brings him to his room as he asks her where the big redwood is. Bro doesn't know you get more flies with honey than vinegar. Rookie mistake. I've talked my way through a DMV to ensure a 60-year-old POS rotted out vehicle using the honey method. It always works a lot better. Being told, he then heads up to the big redwood to spread his parents' ashes. Dumping his dad with a little less carefulness, I guess. He begins walking as then he finds the goat from earlier. A man is out in the woods as he asks who those were. Handing him some water of life, as he calls it, or moonshine. They then drink up. The man is drinking mushroom juice mixed with goat milk. Drinking and then walking away, another goat is on top of the Volkswagen, which the manager earlier was upset about, saying he ruined it. But don't worry, that car was ruined the second it left the production plant. I have no idea why Europeans make their cars this way, or why their police sirens sound like that. It's just like, what are you guys doing over there? This is like the Soviets, what is it, Tatra T603? They're just abominations. Anyways, headed to the bar, Benny Boy then tells the woman from earlier how his story ended. He hits the boy in the head with a bottle, wanders off into the desert because it didn't actually break, and then finally meets his own end. So you're telling me, again, there's absolutely zero way he could find a rock. I just don't buy it. Bro just wanted to crack a human skull, which, given the new terminology for crack, that doesn't sound right. Anyways, the bartender then asks him why he would write that. It's so bleak. Well, usually paying bills. Also, I'm sure he's quite fond of eating, I imagine. And, you know, a roof over your head ain't so bad either. That's like asking why I left being a scientist to do this full time on YouTube. The winter is cold, and survival is fantastic. Telling her she reminds him of his mom. Flawless victory on the flirting brother. Giving her the picture of his mom, he informs her she died a few years after this picture was taken. She got taken out by someone on her way home she got some lead to the face because they broke in. His old man turned into a monster after that and drank himself into an early grave. Asking about the honeymoon suite being closed, he's informed it is haunted. Bartender tried to get in and have a look, but it was declined, informing him there is a witch in there. If you are being chased by it, you need to draw a circle in order to escape. A man then approaches as he is asked about it. As he stands guard, his hat apparently got knocked off before, as then he puts his whole arm in a dark elevator with a lighter. No thanks. Looking into the darkness, he sees a woman back there saying Hokum. Ben is then asked if he's enjoying his stay, as he tells him he kind of, relates to his characters. Being a doucher once more to the people working there, I'm assuming this is Benny Boy's whole personality. The bellboy, who later turns out to also be an ice cream man, says he's a writer too, he's just not getting paid for it yet, as then he's assaulted by Ben burning his hand with a lighter. Or, excuse me, not a lighter, a spoon that was placed in a flame. Man, they're really dialing up the unlikableness here. Anti-Benevolence says his reasoning is he's just trying to get the bellboy to have thicker skin, and that's how you be a writer. It's alright. As a YouTuber, I catch crap all the time for a myriad of things, like writing style, relating to the youth unsuccessfully, the way I wear my hair, You name it, it's been said. However, if someone burns my hand saying I need thicker skin on YouTube, I'm absolutely backhanding that person into oblivion. Like, hand of God smack, because it's like, no shot. I'm going to allow that to stand. Outrageous. The thickest skin you can display at that moment is physical assault. It's like, no, dude. Anyways, leaving behind his tape recorder and his picture, Fiona then asks the bellboy to open the door so she can drop off his stuff. He's like, maybe we shouldn't. She's like, I got a bad feeling. So entering the room, I can't show you any of this as bro's taking himself out by hanging around, so to speak. Flashing over to black and white, he hears wailing noises in the elevator as it won't leave the floor he's on. As it shuts, though, he sees that someone is in there as then he wakes up at the hospital. He has unfortunately been brought back to the world of the living as someone then touches him and he wakes up. Returning back to the hotel, he rings the bell as some men leave. It's actually the cops who are really bad at doing their job. In the immortalized words of, I believe, Wendigoon, which I like to quote him on this, it's very, very real. It's the cops had exhausted their leads and refused to search the skeleton pile until one day they searched the skeleton pile and found skeletons, which then cracked the case wide open. I think I'm ad-libbing a little bit there, but it's pretty true, actually. Anyways, so we will learn rather soon why they're bad at doing their jobs. He just came to get his stuff, though, and it's the end of season, so the hotel is closing. Asking who found him, he says Fiona found him, and he says, oh, well, I would like to apologize for probably traumatizing her, but Fiona went missing a few weeks ago on Halloween. The whole area was searched, but nobody found her. Allegedly. The whole area was searched, except for one major area. Can you guess what it is? There was a guy named Jerry, though, or Mushroom Enjoyer, as I will refer to him as Jer Bear, who Fiona was talking to when she went missing after that. Going to leave, the owner's son says, I bet you have an appreciation for women's intuition now, given that she found him. Fiona had a bad feeling, and that's the only reason he's alive today. Asking him about Fiona, Ben suggests maybe she's in the honeymoon suite. Then he's like, hey, did you search that? She did want to go up there. But the owner's son's like, it's always locked. There's no way she could have got up there. So it wasn't searched. Why, pray tell, would you not search the one area of the hotel? In fact, actually, there's been people that go missing all the time. I think there was a woman who was, there's like a creepy video type thing where she was freaked out in the elevator, and then eventually they found her past a locked door in the water tank because like the water started tasting weird, and they found her like weeks later in the water tank, which is bruh. But yeah, no, you don't just not search a place because you assume it's like locked. And it would take 20 minutes to search, is all I'm saying. It's worth searching. Anyways, why this would not be sus, and like they just told the cops, don't worry, it's locked. That the cops didn't do anything about it. Maybe I should be an investigator at some point, because there is no way this wouldn't raise some red flags to me. I'd be like, oh, cool. Well, hey, here's an idea. Go open the door so I can search it. Anyways, he asks if the police talk to him too, and he tells him just go back to the airport and go home. Continues to be a bit sus. Why not just search it? Anyways, why not search it with some salt? So, flashing back to Fiona cutting him down, Ben then drives into the forest and parks his car next to a van out there. Approaching the candy van, he then goes to open it, but it's locked. Looking in the back, though, the homeless guy from earlier has been in there. Ben confronts him, saying this book was Fiona's, as he says they were friends. She let him borrow it, which is also a bit strange. He says he knows Fiona is gone, though, as he saw her. He broke into the hotel to grab some medicine, basically steal it, as then he heard the honeymoon suite bell. Heading into the lobby, he hears it again, and up at the honeymoon suite bell, it is ringing, as then he looks down and sees Fiona pointing at it. Jerry stole the key, and he's going to go back tonight when the hotel is completely empty because it's closing out for the season. If Ben doesn't come with them, he's just going to go alone anyways. Hanging out in the woods, Ben then asks Jer Bear if he was drinking the magic milk when he saw Fiona. He begins reminiscing about his own wife, as he allegedly had to put her down because she was in pain. Ben then asks, what if they don't find Fiona up there? Which never really gets an answer. So hearing the last car go by, they then move through the woods towards the hotel. Breaking in, it sounds extra spooky. Jerry then heads to go back and then grab the crossbow as the owner's son is there and then goes after him, choking him out. He then hears someone else in the building as the owner's son then calls out, but if somebody was breaking in, it's not like they would really answer you. Benny goes and hides as the owner's son then goes and loads up Jer Bear as he leaves, which then leaves Benny Boy alone here. Immediately, the honeymoon suite bell rings. Woof. Realizing he has the key, he's gonna have to go up there alone. Oof. Imagine saying oof in the year of our Lord 2026. Heading over to the elevator, he then heads up to the honeymoon suite and taking a drink because spooky, he goes to conduct a search of this suite. Seeing the door creak open, seriously, any amount of iron would be good right now. Heading into the actual suite, he then flips on the lights as the clock scares the holy hell out of him. Entering the bedroom, the tub appears to have never been properly drained. This would be my first concern, given how long Fiona was missing. I know some firefighters who have mentioned, and I think I've mentioned it. It's just people have heart attacks in hot tubs sometimes, and then they go missing for a while. Anyways, it becomes essentially human soup. So doing the smart thing, Ben decides to have a nice nap anyways, and not search the tub, as then he hears a shot while his mom comes up to him and then hugs him with very clearly an injury to her face. Seeing a bunny face, the clerk from the front is there asking how he got there. They decide to both head downstairs as Ben sees a door. Going to push the button, he asks what's down there as he says he has found Fiona. How they were able to keep that a secret is beyond me. Why the cops would not search the whole premises and only some areas is beyond me. Why they need to be immediately fired is not beyond me. They need to be immediately fired. So as the clerk man then runs off because the jig is up, the news is out, they found Fiona, he locks Ben in the honeymoon suite, as then we jump back to Fiona in a bunny costume. She's a bit on edge, as the clerk man then tells her to drink her tea while it's still hot. Having drank it, Bro puts something in the tea as she passes out. Grabbing a wheelchair and wheeling her towards the honeymoon suite, he heads up there with her. He immediately places her in the elevator shaft, which, what? Also, future Roanoke here, this dude is wild for this. Sitting her down, it seems as though she met her end through dehydration. But probably not that. She left a message on the tape recorder. She is pregnant, or was pregnant, I guess, with the clerk's baby, and he was upset that she was keeping it, so he did this to cover up his infidelity, because his wife would kill him if he figured it out, and also probably the owner would too. Blood Eagle, this guy in the woods, immediately, that is the most appropriate, I guess, response to this transgression. She attempted to find any escape, as Ben then keeps trying to find a way out. Like some sort of Irish murder escape room, he finds a door as he starts unscrewing the screws on said door. Hearing a noise, he turns around as we jump over to the manager's or owner's son, I suppose, as Jer Bear then wakes up and cuts himself free as he goes to jump. Ben is still trying to escape as someone moves behind him. Sweet lord. Unfortunately for him, one of the screws has already been Roanoked. It's just completely stripped, as the clock then makes a noise as it's continuously 9 p.m. Also, Fiona is back up in action, which is not a good sign. Going to look for her, it appears as though she made a miraculous recovery. Walking around looking for her, he then hears a wailing noise on the intercom as his mom comes around the corner with him. Ugh. The light then starts going out, which is arguably worse. Much more worse than Mommy Dearest showing up, as he is trapped there. The TV turns on as he sees someone standing in the doorway in a bunny costume. It turns back off, but then the TV again flips back on, with a creepy bunny-faced program playing, and it tells us some rather useful information. Ben was playing with a force multiplier that he wasn't supposed to, and it went off. Turns out it was not some random dude who tried to rob her. The bunny then mocks Ben. His dad hates him now, as he told Ben not to go near that, and now her brain's got some fresh air. He goes on to say he should be scared. This bunny is talking mad smack. He's out of line, but he's not wrong. It appears as though Ben was always a turd in the punch bowl then, so also, are we sure Ben didn't meet his end earlier and this is his version of hell? I have no idea. I don't think it is, given the ending. But as the TV then turns off, the carvings are now changing. Hearing another noise, he then looks towards the door as he continues to drink. Seeing his characters in the sand thing, the clock chimes again, and looking for the fire exit, he realizes his only escape is the dumbwaiter shaft, but he's actually dumb because there's clearly another escape. The tape recorder goes off once more, telling him there is no way down there, as he uses the clock to actually push the button, which it appears to do every few minutes. As Fiona comes back up, he then goes to get her out of there. Setting her down, he freaks himself out, as now it is his turn to enter the dumbwaiter and descend. Pushing the button, he heads down, as now he is in the basement. It worked out well for Fiona. Surely it'll work out well for him too. Testing some of the lights, well, they work in an academic sense. They don't really light up the area. Finding lighters and other things hung up, that's not a good sign. Continuing to move through, his lantern completely blows, and as he walks, he finds a concrete wall at the back, which was told to him was already there because of the renovations that the hotel had undergone. His tape recorder starts going off once more, as it's Fiona saying she thinks someone else is down there as she hears wailing. As that happens, Ben is now freaked out as he goes back to the dumbwaiter but finds chalk outlining a doorway. Heading to the dumbwaiter, it's time to go up as Clock Dude is taking his sweet time pushing that button. The light now shuts off as Ben looks out into the dark, hearing cackling as the clock is continuing to just totally, I don't know, I guess blue ball him at this point, as then he sees a face in the darkness. The dumbwaiter begins to descend, saving Ben, and as the dumbwaiter is sent back down, he then looks down, and there is a woman crawling up the shaft. Hearing her make some noise, oh god, she's in the room next. Falling into the bathtub, ugh. He gets the door locked, but she's trying to find a way in, and very likely will find a way in. Grabbing the chalk, Ben then draws a circle around the bed, also works on sea bears as she paces around the bed looking for a way in, as then she continues to laugh at him. It is now the next day as the clerk has arrived back at the hotel. Finding a bloody handprint on the car, the door is open as Jerry is trying to get upstairs to the honeymoon suite. He is injured as the clerk then lies to Jerry Bear about how Ben was drinking, so the clerk just took him back into town and sent him home, which doesn't make any sense to Jerry at all, given that wasn't the plan. Ben somehow went to sleep at some point the previous night as he looks out of the window. Dude, break the window. It cannot be that hard. Jer Bear doesn't want to leave as he says he wants to look for himself. The clerk knows about Jer Bear's wife as he tells him to just take Ben's car and don't come back. Ben continues looking for a way out as Fiona continues to just sit there. I mean, what else do you expect her to do? Remembering the bell from the honeymoon suite, he then goes to ring it as it turns, which then alerts the clerk, but Jer Bear doesn't hear it because he's already outside. Getting into Ben's car, how far do you think you get with a bloody handprint on your window before someone notices that? Ringing the bell once more, Jer Bear then heads back to the door as Ben broke the cord for the honeymoon suite. As Jer Bear only left the keys, he then grabs them as Ben kicks a hole in the wall and finds the cord, but it's too late as Jer Bear already left. Bro, break the window. Are you serious? Throw a chair through it. Do something. With the clerk murders secured for the moment, Jer Bear then comes back and confronts the clerk. Ringing the bell once more, as Fiona told him to never ignore something that feels off, Jer Bear then grabs the key from the clerk as he tries to tell him about how he was threatened as Jer Bear then heads up the elevator. The clerk at this point now goes to light the whole hotel up. Jer Bear comes to the door as Ben then yells out to him. Jer has found the small door as Jer Bear is then unfortunately domed in the head by the clerk with a bolt, trapping Ben once more. Heading down the elevator because he's freaked out, the clerk realizes he doesn't have the key as then he has to go back up and search Jer Bear's body. Realizing this is a problem, he then enters the room looking for Ben because Jer Bear doesn't have it. Looking down the shaft, he sees Ben is already down there and then calling out to him. Ben uses the chalk to draw a circle around himself as he sees the witch is right there. The clerk now heads down to find him as he needs to get that key before the whole place burns down, which is already fully engulfed in flames. Searching the basement, he sees the key is hung up. Grabbing it, the witch is in there with him. He just doesn't realize it. Going to untie it, he then grabs it as chains are then slapped on him by said witch. As Ben sits there in the sea bear circle, his mom then comes to hug him as he tells her it was just an accident. She says she knows, but he can't stay there. Having a nice cry over it, he's alone again as the sea bear circle appears to have worked, but not really. Finding a potato peeler, the clerk is then being pulled along as Bro is just straight up also being dragged to hell. Realizing that he himself is attached to this, he starts cutting his own chains free as the clerk is then pulled in, but Ben is saved. Grabbing the key, he then heads up to dumbwaiter as Fiona continues to stare at him, but then her eyes close as she is now, I guess, put to peace or whatever it's called. Going to go down the elevator. This place hasn't burned down completely, and the reason why is just beyond me. Riding the elevator down, the smoke begins to build up as it is in fact engulfed in flames. Receiving lethal amounts of smoke inhalation, best to cover your mouth and hold your breath at that point. Instead, the nap attack hits once more as the owner's son runs in finding Benny. Grabbing him and bringing him out, he's back in the hospital for a second stay as Albie the bellboy from earlier is now there. Asking for 2 scoops of vanilla, he then works at the ice cream parlor next door as the remains of Fiona and Jerry were found in the wreckage. As he says he's worried this may have been his fault, Ben then asks how, as apparently Ice Cream Man spiked his whiskey with Jerry's mushroom powder. He says he did this because he burnt his hand. Okay, well, that makes sense. He realizes that people with closed minds can't see witches, but after taking those shrooms, now he can. Asking if he can bring his manuscript, Ben says no, but he says, well, I'm going to bring it anyways because, of this situation, as Ben then agrees to read it once it's dropped off tomorrow, as then he goes to write the epilogue. As the boy goes to turn away, the man, this time, cannot do it. Instead, he offers the glass bottle to the boy to break on his head instead. As the boy goes to do it, he throws it, choosing life over riches, which there's a skull right there. If they had taken 4 seconds to look around, as I have stated, they would have found this. Ensuring they will be able to break it later anyhow, I'm sure there has to be some sort of allegory here, but thus concludes Hokum. But Roanoke, I can hear you already saying, how, pray tell, is there any ability to biologically explain a supernatural witch? Well, at this point, I think we are all very aware that A, the mental gymnastics I am capable of would make me a gold medalist in the Olympics if it were a sport. 2, we really are here to learn about the physical impacts of substances on the brain because it's an excuse to talk about the actual structures that could be impacted, and so a chance to learn some biology. And D, the wild speculation of the reality barrier that separates us in general from what could be on the other side, given how much our species talks about it, yet individually, most of us will never see anything hinting that it even is there in the first place, means this is a perfect setup to start from. So let's get to it. The first part we need to discuss is what exactly is happening to the human brain when it is affected by a certain fungi, because there are highly notable events that unfold for some that are long-term worth investigating, actually. So, not because it's just fun for people, disclaimer, I've never done mushrooms, but because of the potential benefits it has on the brain itself that go well beyond just making you feel good for a few hours. There are 3 things that mushrooms do, which is why we need to be careful when you're just like traipsing through a forest looking for them. They either don't work, they send you on a psychedelic trip, or they just straight up flatline you. And the flatlining part is way easier to do given there are a lot of them out there that are totally capable of doing this because they are super poisonous. All throughout human history, humanity at some point in time had to try everything that we eat now to see if it was going to be a problem. Uugo has been carved into several stone tablets in the past as 8 weird ground plant, Uugo die diarrhea death. So the fact that we can put mushrooms on pizza meant that someone had to try that mushroom and then just thug it out to see what the effects were. Given a ton of mushrooms are poisonous, again, it's a miracle anyone wanted to eat them in the first place, but what's fascinating about fungi is it's sort of like a mid-step between plant and animal, so to speak. Because of that, as an animal, we would classify it more as plant-like, and being more plant-like, it contains chemicals and materials within itself that could be poisonous to animals. Sort of like how technically capsaicin is supposed to keep animals away because it burns. Some humans love it. I don't know why. It's like, cool, I love burning. Anyways, or maybe things like cocoa or coffee can be highly poisonous to other creatures out there, yet once again, humans love it. In fact, I'm drinking coffee right now after I took a bunch of over-the-counter mushroom supplements this morning. It helps with focus and tangential thinking, which will be important actually later. Anyhow, from a plant's perspective, it's a substance, sort of like the mushroom produces, that in fact it can't produce its own nutrition from like the sun, that makes it appear much more like an animal, at least to a plant. Of course, a plant isn't going to think that, and even if it did, I don't care what a plant thinks. That is, until the happening takes place, and then I'm very likely going to care very quickly. Regardless, this is a mid-step that appears interesting because what certain mushrooms produce that ends up affecting the human brain. Perhaps it's the similarities to animals that in turn causes this interaction to be a reality. The psychedelic mushrooms create a substance known as psilocybin, which, if you consume psilocybin, will enter your digestive tract, where it then will become, or at least converted, into psilocin. Which doesn't sound too crazy, but what is actually happening is a phosphate is being broken off of the compound, causing it to become an active drug at that point. Enzymes, known as phosphatases, are responsible for this process, which then causes it to begin looking a lot like another chemical. As your body continues to break down this material, the important thing to understand is how exactly it affects your brain. Within the anxiety meat within your skull, in total, your brain has around 5 to 10 milligrams of serotonin to work with. It's wild just how little your brain can actually utilize or need, and how deviating from this by just a few milligrams can either create depression or mania. This is because the communication within the brain is incredibly precise, and the glymphatic system, which is the waste removal system of the brain, cleans it every night in order to keep this process kind of running as smoothly as possible and not have a buildup. And actually, it's kind of thought maybe Alzheimer's is the glymphatic system failing, which is not good, so we need to look into that more. But so back to the mushrooms. The mushroom itself produces the chemical psilocin, which after it gets ingested, which is physically going to resemble serotonin. This is a bit of an issue, as one might imagine, because if you take 1 gram of dried mushrooms, this results in about 7 milligrams of psilocin interacting with the brain. This dead center is pretty much in total how much your brain has to operate with. So essentially, your serotonin levels increase by 100% because of this imposter chemical floating around the brain. It's not actually serotonin, it just looks like serotonin and can go in the same receptors. And what's important to remember concerning all this is the brain doesn't continually dump 100% of its serotonin every time that it fires. It's very selective. And here comes the mushrooms with the chair concerning this process. As psilocin floods the brain, it is indiscriminate as far as how it interacts. Whereas the brain would normally release just a little bit of these neurochemicals and then they're degraded, this does not happen as quickly with a literal mushroom byproduct within the brain. As a result, you now have most neurons dealing with some level of what it thinks is serotonin. So then what are the neurological impacts of this? Well, you just straight up start tripping. Binding to the serotonin receptors, it will begin altering how the neurons themselves behave because it won't as easily let go of the receptors, meaning it is continually activating them. Within the brain are very specific neurons that are affected more heavily by the imposter neurochemicals among us. Yes, that was very cringe. Moving on. These are known as pyramidal neurons, and they are sort of like the output neurons that are basically shaped roughly like pyramids. They reside within the cerebral cortex, and their purpose is to functionally broadcast incoming information from sensory neurons. They will either regulate or dampen incoming information and then send that information if it is important enough. In fact, I have a perfect example as to what they do. So you know how sometimes you're sitting there minding your own business, being an absolute Chad because you're watching Roanoke Gaming, and then all of a sudden one of your ears go really, really quiet, and then a few seconds later you hear that ee noise? Well, that's a pretty standard experience had by most people, but what is happening is a signal from the inner ear hairs, likely produced by nothing actually, is self-amplifying. As it amplifies, obviously your temporal lobe gets involved, but the pyramidal neurons also get involved, and they attempt to determine, is this normal? Determining no, it's not normal, it's just a self-amplifying signal, they will then in turn shut it down so that it does not drive you absolutely insane. Why exactly? Well, let's say that you're like a hunter in a situation involving a predator. Hearing would be great. You don't need that noise being constant. Now, if you damage your ears, say like if you work in a factory or first responder, listen to music too loud, or maybe you were in the military with the last one, obviously not being service related, and they call you a dork on the way out, this signal will continue to send because the sensory hairs in the inner ear are destroyed, which ironically, if they stop reporting to your brain, it becomes the E noise. Bit stupid, yes, but, you know, humans live way longer than we're supposed to nowadays. Like, your elders would have been in their 30s when we were cavemen, which means I'm officially an elder now, which is crazy to me. Anyways, so these neurons are quite important, but the other issue is, remember, all neurons become impacted. You have something in your brain known as the default mode network, and this is essentially always running, and it's self-referential thought and what you are based on what you think about yourself. Not in like a selfish way, but everything associated with you, because you have to know that you exist in the environment around you to know what you even are, where you are, what you think, how you feel, what's going on with you and your perception of everything around you. So when you pop mushrooms, this network gets interrupted like you wouldn't believe. You can think of it sort of like a country concerning your brain. You have the government, in which would maybe be the default mode network, and that's how the country is represented, but you still have citizens as well. While the citizens have a say, clearly policy like concerning foreign nations or what to do or taxes or stuff like that is not so much dictated by the individual, but the collective, with the government as essentially the front runner of this collective. When you take shrooms, it increases entropy in the brain, which at this point, it would be like every citizen that never really had any interaction with the government at first, all getting the same exact amount of say in what happens concerning policy. Clearly, you would have some that agree with everything, some that don't. But the point is, the main body of managing things now is dissolved into just a larger group. This, as you might imagine, creates a little bit of chaos, which mushrooms do in the human brain as well. Several you-isms will actually cease to function correctly, but new ideas can emerge because areas of the brain that are usually quieter because of their serotonin receptors not being as highly activated will now suddenly get louder. This does several things to the human brain and the perception of the person, which does relate to our sense of reality. Typically, a person will experience something known as ego dissolution, and this has been connected in a way of being like you dealing with baser and higher yous. I know that sounds spiritual, but actually it's not. It's based on the brain. So we're going to talk about that because it's actually rather interesting. It's like a physical thing, not like a, oh, your higher spiritual self. That's not what we're talking about. So it is said in every human, there is a human and there is a monkey fighting for power. You can't just ignore one in favor of the other. And this may be a little bit of an outdated model for the most part, but it kind of works here. The human is the superego. The monkey is the id, and you are the ego. The superego like thinks ahead, looks out for others, wants to do what's right, and it's kind of self-sacrificial, and several other things that psychologists have labeled it, but you kind of get the point. The id wants to do what feels good. It's aggressive, violent, but self-protective. It is the monkey. You, as the ego, have to manage both and determine what is the best course of action. As you can see, you shouldn't always self-sacrifice, and you shouldn't also just completely act selfishly to protect yourself either. It just depends on the context of the situation. Hence why you can't listen to one over the other all the time, because eventually it will force its way into your life. Now, with the ego dissolved, nobody is monitoring the situation between these two. Because of that, your experience between these is going to be more profound. Along with that, your brain is also having other areas communicate louder than normal, creating timekeeping issues as well, since everything is connected. And this is why it appears as though people might have good trips and bad trips with it, because essentially two parts of your brain you're normally coordinating are no longer being coordinated. So anyways, this is why people on shrooms appear to behave strangely to those not on shrooms, yet to them it makes perfect sense. What's the most interesting aspect about this, before explaining the reality issue, is there are actual benefits that have been noted. In the following weeks after you do this, it has been noted that after popping shrooms, neuroplasticity has a remarkable uptick. Genetically, it appears to activate the mitotic abilities of the brain. Now clearly, this would be quite beneficial, but it's not all sunshine, lollipops, rainbows, and butterflies. It doesn't just inspire the brain to begin forming new connections that are wonderful and everything is great, and also through dendritic reaching, but it can still inspire neurogenesis, which is the formation of new neurons. This can be good, it could be bad. It really just depends on what sort of environment you're in. However, there are some clear benefits. Actually, I remember watching a documentary on a guy who had like severe cluster headaches so bad it would put him down for days. The issue was, as soon as he got over one, he would get another one because they would happen every few days. He was given oxygen, which was the only thing that he said lowered it from a 10 to a 9. However, upon taking mushrooms, it appears as though it completely prevents them, or at least causes so few that his life got tremendously better. The whole point of the documentary was like the government didn't want him taking them, so he had to go through more nefarious routes to achieve these, and like more I don't know, holistic doctors, I guess is the best way to put it, when this is something that we should definitely be investigating, because clearly it has benefits to people. So for 3 months, it appears that this mushroom would work, and then after that, he has to take more, otherwise the cluster headaches return. Now, this type of stuff exists all throughout I guess medical science. It just sometimes it's considered to be more fringier than the other. For instance, I remember botulism back in the day just being like a treatment for, you know, obviously wrinkles and stuff. My girlfriend, who she jumped out, like she used to do the whole paratrooper thing. I think I mentioned this in another video. Anyway, she hit her head pretty hard a bunch of times. So she damaged her brainstem to a degree. So now she takes botulism to prevent those migraines from taking over. And actually, what's interesting, it has about that 3-month mark before she has to do it again. But that's just saying that like there's alternatives to just migraine medication or things like other things do exist. But again, by taking other medication, or not, it's not really a medication, this is more just a mushroom in this case, these things can be used to better the lives of plenty of people. It just needs more research into how it can be properly applied and what is the active chemical in it that, you know, can actually do it. It's sort of like my talk about if we go to Mars, we're going to have to take parasites with us because parasites actually calm our immune systems. If we can figure out what the active chemical in parasites are that then calm the immune system, then we can expose ourselves to that rather than the parasite itself. Much like with mushrooms, if we can figure out what the active chemical is preventing cluster headaches from returning, then we can use that rather than the whole psychedelic trip and all that. Although that might be intrinsic to what is actually solving the problem in the first place, in which case that might just be par for the course of how to fix it. But the biggest question on everyone's mind is how exactly does this allow Ben to see a literal witch? And this is where it's going to get more speculative because, well, it's really more of a thought experiment than a bona fide science issue because it starts branching past the actual known universe, or at least our perception of reality, into more, fringier ideas is the best way to put it. And the biggest question with that is that you're going to need to ask yourself is, what is reality really? A weird question because we all assume we're experiencing the same reality, but we actually aren't because of the word just said, which is experiencing. When you wake up in the morning, everything you see, hear, smell, feel, or taste is processed through meat, electrical meat, and electrical fat. And much like your ears ringing, the meat is not reliable. Let's just stick with eyesight on this one because it is the most foundational sense we use to understand the world. I'm about to flex on you, but my reality is 2015 vision, which is apparently better than 2020 vision. So everything is sharp and clear. It's absolute baller. I wake up in the night and there's no blurry things in the corner. However, I get migraines. So big F's in the chat, which then blind me for a few minutes. As a treat. Does this mean the world around me suddenly is missing sections, or it isn't my interpretation of the world around me that has changed? let's say there's an objective reality, right? Then there is a perceived reality because we are perceiving it. As a species, we cannot even perceive all of reality, and what's wild is we know this as well. Compare a bird's vision to human vision. Birds have an insanely superior vision to humans. We can see in 3 primary colors. We're trichromatic, with apparently there's some mutations allowing some humans to see in 4 colors, so they're tetrachromatics. Birds are just standardly tetrachromats. And I don't know if I said chromatids, but it's chromats. Anyways, along with that, they can see in the UV spectrum as well. Basically, the world to birds looks like Pandora and Avatar. They get to see that all the time. We do not. We are basically dog vision to birds. Dogs are even worse off, seemingly. But this is just one example, but if you expand that out to the electromagnetic spectrum, humans can only see an incredibly narrow band of visible light, 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum. That means, just concerning energy bouncing off this planet, we are missing 99.996% of perceivable energy that may allow us to see things that others can't. Do you know how crazy the sky would look if we could even see just 4% more? And this is the crux of the issue. Our meat is not that great at perceiving the world around us. It's also not great at explaining things either. Like, I like to say this example, and somebody's always like, oh, well, blue and yellow. But like, imagine there was no eyesight, right? Imagine you've seen color, but you're trying to explain to another person who's never even seen color before what color looks like. Try to describe the color green. You can't be like, well, blue and yellow, or look at a leaf. Because even then, it's all based on perception. If they've never seen color before, they have no idea what you're talking about, and there's no way to help them understand what color is anyways, because the perception of it does not exist. So that's where language fails us, that's where our bodies fail us, that's where our eyes fail us, because there's even an idea that we aren't even seeing the same colors, we're just agreeing that a leaf is called green. What if green isn't green? How would I be able to explain to you what green actually is if blue looks different to you and yellow looks different to you as well? And there's nothing you can do to really get that idea across. It's basically stuff like that. There are lapses in our ability to even share reality with another person who is also experiencing reality. It's all very personal because we don't really even know how to describe it to others, I guess is the best way to put it. So anyways, like I said, our meat is not that great at perceiving the world around us, by any stretch of the imagination, actually. And don't even get me started on us being 3-dimensional creatures with a vague interpretation of the 4th dimension, because if other planes of existence do exist, there are, like let's say there are extra-dimensional creatures, we would not even really be able to perceive all of them apart from what is happening directly in front of them. It's an interesting idea, but it's sort of like how as we move through reality and time, there are snippets of us at any point in time that are completely frozen. We can't move because at that point in time, we were doing exactly one thing. As time passes, we move, but freezing time, we freeze, because that's the snippet of time, and time is just that snapshot. So, extra-dimensional creatures would likely be able to move even if you froze time, given they operate within that realm. That's sort of what I mean, I guess is the best way to explain it. And again, all hypothetical clearly, as we have no idea what that would actually look like, or even if they do exist, likely due to the actual limitations of our brains. And therein lies the issue, the limitations. I mean, there's stories all the time, you know, if you take like, if you want a biblical aspect like demons or jinns or angels or whatever, Odin, you know, it's like there's been humans grasping at the idea that maybe there's something beyond our comprehension or our perception, but we're limited by our own bodies. So as Ben was exploring the woods to dump off his parents, he runs across Jer Bear, who claims the only way you can see these things is to take mushrooms. Now we have to ask ourselves then, is it a hallucination that he thinks is real, or is it an area of the brain that typically will be filtered out of the conversation so that our perceived reality remains intact? I believe in Hokum, it is the latter over the former. Going back to our discussion on the entropy of the brain and how parts that were quieter at first are now just as active and no longer filtered out, we have to understand that our brains are constantly fine-tuning our experience of the world through past knowns, possibly the shutout of new knowns, and possibly the brain incorporating new knowns, as well as what we call this being learning. Think about like all of the aha moments you've had for one reason or another. This is the brain absorbing new information, communicating with itself, and then understanding what is happening. You didn't know it prior, and now you do know it because it was told to you. Then, the new known becomes a past known and is incorporated into your future. All experience-based, all following a similar pathway that is basically completely ground out and well known to your brain. I actually have, like, sometimes people call these blind spots, but I have a major blind spot that I am well aware of. And it's quite interesting because if I think something should go a certain way, right? This is exactly how my brain works. If I'm like looking for something or I think something's wrong with a vehicle or XYZ, right? My brain will not let me actually think of other things on how to fix something or find something or do something until I do the thing that I think it is. And it's not because I'm just being stubborn about it. It is literally, it does not even cross my mind that I need to look into other avenues until I figure out if this avenue is the thing that I need to do. And I've actually explained it to people, like when they say something, like it's like it'll come back to me, right? It'll happen every time. Suggestions are made on what I should do, and it's like I can sit there and agree with them, but my brain literally is like, I need to do this first, and then later, maybe like a few days passes, I'll actually mention to that person, oh yeah, I think it might be this other thing, and it was actually suggested by the other person that I do that thing, and then I'm like, oh my god. Like, that's right, you mentioned I should do this. It's very interesting. I don't know why my brain does that, but it's just kind of using the pathway that it knows in order to solve a problem. And then when that doesn't solve the problem, then it's like a new node opens up where it's like, okay, investigate further, find new pathway. But before that main pathway is used, I won't apparently even use the other pathway. It's very odd. Some would call it being completely stubborn. I don't think it's stubbornness because I'm not actively choosing to do that. It is just how my brain operates. So with essentially these pathways, the same can be said for like eyesight in general. My best example again is going to be a migraine. When I get them, I can see the limitations of my occipital lobe, oddly enough. When you see information, your brain is filling in so many gaps, you'd think that you weren't even seeing, actually. When the faces I see during a migraine are presented to me, it's just going to be like a piece or possibly even the whole face is missing. Yet my brain is reporting that there is skin there, clearly, even though I can't see it. That means despite the actual incoming information, my brain is saying, yeah, but I'm pretty sure there's skin there based on the things that I can see around it. So everyone looks like Slender Man to me. If I look at a book, the page is still there, but the words are missing because my brain doesn't know what the words actually are. It's filling in the missing information just very poorly. So then, what does a brain do when it's not aware of incoming information because perhaps it falls on the outskirts of human perception? Well, it doesn't exist, even though physically it exists. Your brain will just get rid of it. The witch in Hokum is one that falls on the outside of human perception, possibly by even just a little bit, which ironically other animals may interpret or perceive given their other senses are stronger. This idea is also like how animals will react to ghosts apparently, because their perception of the area around them is stronger than a human's. Human perception, on the other hand, has excellent eyesight. We put all of our stat points into eyesight, but other parts are just not as fine-tuned, so we don't see anything. But if you ask people who have allegedly had a supernatural encounter, they said they felt something, as if their body was reacting to something they couldn't see. It's almost like, remember Xbox Connect and how people were saying they were seeing ghosts on it because it was picking up something that you couldn't see, but the Xbox Connect could see, because it's a different level of perception, which is not running through meat, but instead electrical activity purely. Stuff like that. So this is pretty much what I believe is happening in Hokum. Human sight is hampered by the lack of communication from other areas of the brain. By taking these mushrooms, the person can see the witch because the other areas become louder, so to speak. And then once the actual witch is perceived, this is a new known, and now it becomes a permanent known as the brain can see it since it's no longer filtering it out. Now, I can hear you saying, but Roanoke, wouldn't this be a more common occurrence? Well, in some ways, humans are perceiving the witch, not just in sight. They are instead feeling her, saying the honeymoon suite is haunted, indicating that she is somewhere in the area through stories discussing what she does, but never seeing it for themselves. But clearly, someone has at some point and then warned others. The mushrooms appear to be able to unlock communications with the areas of the brain that tap into the supernatural, so to speak, or at least allow humans to be able to see it rather than just feel it. And this has been something that has existed all throughout our species' history. Spirituality is nothing new to us. We exist in a world where many stories have cropped up, indicating there is something going on well beyond just our perception of reality. And given 99.99% of the energy spectrum we can't even observe with our eyes, we have to use machines to do it just exists if humans take mushrooms and Hokum, and this even allows us to see 1% more, then it's possible the supernatural really does lie that close to our perception so we can feel it, which then we are able to physically interact with it, which means it's able to physically interact with us, like giving Ben bruises on his wrists from the chains. But hey, that's just my cracked out hypothesis that I have after watching this. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching and supporting. If you would like to further support this channel, because YouTube has switched to an AI algorithm, then please leave a like and a comment, as the algorithm is screwing everyone lately. So it does help. At least until this thing learns. I had one guy be like, well, it's just you, bro. Nobody else is having any issues. It's like, dude, I talk to other YouTubers all the time. Like, bigger channels, like with millions and millions of subs, down to channels with hundreds of thousands of subs, because I like to gather data points. Yes, it's actually happening. A lot of people have seen their stuff drop off by like 60%. So it just is what it is. Anyways, I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Instagram links down in the description. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the Astronaut tier, we have Army and Kusa. Thank you guys for your awesome continued support. At the Astrophysicist tier, we have Death Dancer, Webtron Supreme, and Commander Balthael. Thank you guys as well. At the Scientist tier, we have Some Big Nerd, Metric System, Invictus Echo, Official Texan, SSJ4 Lotus, and Gina Elaine. Thank you guys. Absolute ballers. And the rest of my patrons, I really do appreciate y'all's support. You don't even have to help, and you are, so thank you. Keeps the cats fed, the lights on, and Crackpot theories rolling out. So thanks again. All right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see y'all in the next one.